The Chicago Bulls' play since the All-Star break has been nothing less than inspired. The Chicago Bulls actually hold one of the best records, one of the top 10 record in the NBA since the All-Star break, and since February 24th, they actually have a top 6 record. We're going to talk about this record that the Bulls have, what's gotten them there, and while many people are questioning if this winning streak and this recent play is legitimate, let's talk about the case that, what if it is? Right, we're going to get to all that plus more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Sir Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And y'all see the title. The thing is, right? I want to start off with this. The Bulls' recent play has been nothing less than inspired, and we'll talk about the stats that backed it up. I'll throw some numbers at you guys. We'll talk about some of those things, but I think overall, it's a fair question to ask, right? The people that doubt this run because of the time of year it's happening, the season that the Bulls have been through, where the expectations were for the Bulls coming into the season. All those things give legitimate reasoning of why, people who question this run by the Bulls and ask, are the Bulls doing the right thing by winning this many games? It's a fair question to ask. Now, I do think that for people who can't embrace the fact that this is what the team's going to do, that's a completely different thing, right? But for people that have some questions, the people that have trepidation about this Bulls run, listen, there's validity in that, right? I think that, it's now turned into like a fan versus fan thing, and I understand that too, right? But I think that there two things can be true at the same time. The Bulls are playing much better, right? And even if you are somebody that looks at this and say, hey, no, this is legitimate, which talk about if that's the case, the people that have the doubt on well, what if this is just a flash in the pan? What if the Bulls start back off sucking next season, and all we get out of this is a couple of wins at the end of the year that are meaningless, and we end up missing out on having a lottery pick? All that's fair questions to ask, right? But I think when you look at it, I think it's a two-tone conversation. I'm going to do my best to have that here as much as I can with a one-person show, but let's get into it, right? So the Bulls are 10-7 since the All-Star break. That's the 10th best record in the league over that time, right? They're 10-5 since February 24th, which that's a key date to look at if you want to give the Bulls a couple of games, right? To really look at, after the trade and things that have happened. And they're tied for the 6th best winning percentage in the NBA over that time span, right? Only the OKC Thunder, the Boston Celtics, the Golden State Warriors, the Houston Rockets, and the Cleveland Cavaliers have a better record than that, right? And part of the reason why the Bulls are doing that is they're playing two-way basketball. They are playing extremely good basketball on both sides of the ball. Now, there have been some games where the defense hasn't looked as solid as others, right? You can't take that away from them. But they've continually been active over that, right? They have a 6.2 net rating over that span. And that's the key thing, right? I talked about coming into the season how typically point differential and net rating are two things that really kind of start separating teams. That's usually the things that even out, right? Usually by the end of the season, the top 8 teams, the top 10 teams are usually indicated by the point differential. It's just usually the one thing that kind of always works itself out. Now, it's not always universal. I want to be clear in that, but it is one of those things that you really can look at. And the Bulls, right, when you look at it, they have the 10th best overall point differential in the Eastern Conference since the beginning of the season at negative 2.4, right? They've been playing much better since the All-Star break, so it's no surprise that they've risen up and they're the 9th seed, right? But if you look at the top 10 teams in the Eastern Conference via point differential, those are the same 10 teams that are in the play-in, right? In the playoffs and the play-in combined. So again, like I said, that typically is one of those things that it all ends up working out. It just all ends up doing it. Like, it's really a funny thing. If you go and look at the last few years, specifically in the Eastern Conference, the Western Conference can be a little bit trickier with the point differential because, it's the Western Conference, right? But I still think even then, if you're looking at the Western Conference, the top 10 teams there are all teams that are competing for the play-in. I think Phoenix right now has a worse point differential than Dallas, but they are in the 10th spot. But anyway, that all aside, right? Is that the way that the Bulls are doing this is really special when you start looking at the numbers and breaking that down and looking at what the Bulls were prior to the All-Star break and what they've been pre-All-Star break. I mean, well, post-All-Star break. So before, let's look since the All-Star break, right? The Chicago Bulls are averaging 122.5 points per game. That's number one in the league. That's number one in the, again, I say that again. That's number one in the league. Assists, 29.8. That's sixth in the NBA. Rebounds, 44.9, 8th in the NBA. Free throw attempts, 17. That's 18th in the NBA. Okay. Field goal shooting percentage. We're shooting as a team right now 48.8%, which is ninth in the NBA. We're ninth in three-point shooting percentage at 39%. We're second in assist to turnover ratio at 2.33. Our turnover percentage, we're fourth at 12.4. Effective field goal shooting percentage, 56.5, which is 10th in the NBA. Crazy. We're second in the NBA in pace at 102.42. And we have the seventh best offensive rating and the seventh best defensive rating. And our net rating, again, as we pointed out, it's ninth in the NBA. And why is that so important, right? When you look at that, every single statistical category, the Chicago Bulls are 10th in, except for free throw attempts. And when you look at free throw attempts, we were dead last in the NBA. And the fact that we've gone up as many spots as what we've had, we've jumped up 12 spots. That's a large part because of Coby White and Josh Giddey and them getting to the free throw line at the rate that they have been getting to it. So I've talked about this a lot over on NBA Central because I've gotten to talk about basically winning basketball all year there and focus on that. But when you're top 10, when you could be top 10 in offensive rating and top 10 in defensive rating, you're cooking with something, right? That's something that you're really at a base there. You're looking at minimum probably a play-in or a playoff team, right? That just is typically how it works out. If you're able to stay top 10 in offense, top 10 in defense, you're able to get into that. Now, the Bulls, it's over the last third of the season, so of course they're not going to get into that. But that's what the numbers are looking really good. The Bulls, this isn't just like the Bulls are just playing okay and beating some teams. The Bulls are playing some great basketball. And while initially it was looked at as, well, they're beating bad teams, they're beating good teams. Now, a team like the Denver Nuggets were missing one of their key pieces, but the Lakers weren't. Now LeBron was coming back from a groin injury, and we'll see tomorrow how the Bulls fare against the Lakers in that case. But when you're looking at this team, there is legitimate things that are being done that is making this team a good team. And that's why I think that the question that we have to ask here is that, all right, what if this is now who this team is? What if between the balance, the coaching that Billy Donovan's doing, who I keep wanting to tell everybody he deserves a lot of accolades and acclaim because he is coaching this team really fucking well, if we're just being 100% honest, right? But if this is legitimately who the Chicago Bulls can be, right? And I think that sometimes, and I'll talk about the other side of it. You guys know I like to talk about all sides of the conversation, right? If this is legitimate, who the Chicago Bulls can be, right? And that's going to take a big if, right? That means that Josh Giddey, Coby White, they're going to have to keep this up at the start of next season and start off the season looking like this, right? Every team kind of can have, some teams can have slow starts even if they don't make changes, right? So I'll forgive a 5-8 game slow start, but they're going to have to get up and get to rhythm because Coby and Giddey have been the engine of this Bulls team. And like I said on yesterday's episode, if you got to try to knock one to boost up the other, you're stupid. What they're doing is so special, not because they're doing it in a silo just by themselves. It's because they're doing it at the same time, right? They're having that impact for the Bulls at the same time. That is what's making this run so special, right? So they have to do that, right? And getting Io back, what we're able to do in transition, all those type of things can really help with that. Overall, this Bulls team is playing great basketball. And that's objectively, that's by the eye test, that's by the statistical things that are backing it up. And for anyone that has the doubts over that, fair, you got doubts. I said it earlier in this episode because of where it's happening, who it's happening against, all those type of things, your expectations coming into the season. But what if it's real? Have we ever stopped to slow so much down and think, what if this is legitimate? You have a 22-year-old point guard who is stepping up his game. Like, that should not be something that's surprising to people, right? Like, for people that doubt it so much, that like to doubt if if Josh Giddey is actually improving, and like, oh, well, is he really improving? He's 22 years old. He better damn well be improving. Like, that's the whole reason we got him, is because he's with the chance of him improving and rounding out and fleshing out his game. Coby at 25, refinement of his game, and part of that refinement is getting to the free throw line. He's still doing everything else really good like he has at other times, but that ability to get to the free throw line and him and Giddey playing together, that is what makes this backbone special. But it's not just those guys, right? We've talked about it. Kevin Huerter's having a big impact for the Chicago Bulls. Zach Collins has had one. Between Julian and Dalen, it's like one game, each one of those guys are having one of their moments. Modest Bucilis, Trey Jones when he was healthy. You can't wait to get him back, right? These things that are going in the Bulls' direction and in the Bulls' favor are starting to round out and starting to show themselves. And so here's the question, right? Like, yes, we understand now that the Bulls are at risk of losing a lottery pick if they make it out the play-in, which is a legitimate question at this point, right? There's a legitimate case to be made now that if the Bulls can the Bulls make it out the play-in? The teams that are playing better. Both the Bulls and the Orlando Magic are both on 3-game winning streaks. The Miami Heat are on a 2-game winning streak. They're still 2-8 in their last 10. The Bulls are 8-2. The Orlando Magic are 6-4. And then you have the Atlanta Hawks, who are on a 1-game losing streak, but they're 7-3 in their last 10, right? So the teams in that play-in area are starting to play much better, right? They're starting to get more wins. But the Bulls right now are the hottest team in that play-in area. So there is a legitimate chance. But if the Bulls do miss out on a lottery pick, let's just talk about this. If they make it into the 8th seed, have a chance to face off against the Cleveland Cavaliers, do you benefit from that? I think that's the way that you have to look at it. One, playoff experience. Getting modest playoff experience in his rookie year, getting, Josh Giddey's already had tons of playoff experience, but with this team, him and Coby getting playoff experience as a backcourt to face off against another great backcourt in the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? Other guys, Dalen, the Julians, right? Those type of guys. To be able to have that moment in that playoffs, I've been a guy that I've said there's no point in making the playoffs if it's not competitive. That's always been my thing. I think that the Bulls didn't learn much. We didn't see much growth from a non-competitive series against the Milwaukee Bucks a few years back. But this team is different. Regardless of the end result, even if the Bulls end up getting swept, I do think that probably 3 out of those 4 games are going to be competitive games. And because of that, what the experience that you gain from that, from testing yourself against that. Let's factor that part in, right? Then let's also factor in the fact that this is an extremely deep draft. And because of that, you're still going to be able to get what's comparable to a lottery. For example, players that are probably going to go 15, 16, 18 in this draft would have absolutely been lottery picks in last year's draft, right? Where we got Modest Bucilis, by the way, at number 11. So there's that part of it. Even I get it where people are saying, well, it's better chance than not if you pick in the top 4, then maybe you're getting that star. But let's be clear here. We've seen players before that turn into stars that weren't drafted, that didn't have to be drafted in the top 5, right? So if the Bulls can walk away, I'm just laying out an example here. If the Bulls walk away with a playoff run, getting playoff experience for their players, finishing the season strong, and then if you can still add an Asa Newell, right, a JT Toppin, a Rasheer Fleming, right, a God forbid Derek Queen still go around that. I do think he's going to move up. But if you can still walk away from the draft with one of those guys, guess what? I'll take the playoff experience. I'll take the end of season run. I'll take the players that are playing better, right? So you got to ask yourself, what's to gain from that, especially when you're looking at this scenario specifically. People talk in generalities, right? And I get it. Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, these guys, Dylan Harper, these guys are all potential-wise miles above what you're going to get in those lower rounds. But let's not act like there's still not star-level potential in the lower part of the first half. There absolutely is, right? And especially if the Bulls don't make it past the Cleveland Cavaliers to where they're still going to have that pick right outside the lottery. I tell you what, again, if that ends up being what happens here, I still like the talent that the Bulls can get there. So if you walk away from a season in which you came in, predicted to win 28 games, you've already blown past that with 31 wins. If you end up, or what do we got, 32 wins now? If you end up going through this, making it out of play-in, which is still a big if. I think we still need to say, like, while I do think that the Bulls absolutely can make it out the play-in this year, it's still a big if on will they. And so if they go throughout all this, don't make it out the play-in, and still get a lottery pick, and then you're basically guaranteeing yourself a chance to draft one of Asa, Derek Queen, whoever else you want to throw up in there, man, listen, this is worth it. And it took me, and right, I'm not calling anybody else out in this. It took me a second to come to this realization and being like, you know what? I'm cool with it, right? Because for a while there, listen, I love to see the players play well. And I've always been a guy like, hey, they're going to play well. Great. I'm going to embrace that. But I've always kind of been like, well, damn, like it does suck if we miss out on a lottery pick. But now looking at it and how the draft could fall and looking at all these mocks and things like that, I don't know, y'all. I'm starting to believe that it's not the worst thing in the world. And I think more people need to embrace that. The growth that this team is doing is great. But let's say this, right? Let's talk about the flip side. I'm just somebody who I always love talking about all sides of an argument or a conversation. So in fairness, let's talk about this. What if it does come back to bite the Bulls in the ass, right? What if the Bulls do end up making it out the play-in tournament, and then they do end up going into the playoffs, and then they come out with a non-lottery pick outside of that, and then the talent there ends up being not a good talent? Like what if literally all the players that end up being something end up coming off the board, and then the Chicago Bulls are left sitting there with scraps, basically looking like, well, hey, at least we got a playoff run out of it. There's a chance for that too. I don't want to act like there's not a chance for that. All right, I want to be clear here. There is a chance of that happening. Just in fairness, and talking about all sides of a conversation, you have to look at it and say that the Bulls could put themselves in a situation where they come out of this playoff tournament or play-in tournament, whatever else it is, and they negatively impact their ability to add a game-changing talent, right? To not add a top 10 talent, something like that. And okay, right? That's fairness. I want to say that again. I'm trying to have a fair conversation here, and in fairness, you got to have that part of the conversation as well. And the cost that it comes at, and if that does backfire, you better be hopeful that Modest Bucelis turns into an amazing player. You better be hopeful that this run that we see with Coby and Josh Giddey, this chemistry that we're seeing, is legitimate. Because if you come out of this and we find out at the start next year that it was a flash in the pan, again, I don't think that at all. But for the nature of the conversation, because I have nobody here to bounce off a counterpoint to me, I got to bounce it off myself, is that what if this chemistry that we're seeing between Josh and Coby is just a end of season March basketball type thing, and we start off next season and we find out these guys aren't working together. It's not what it was before. We got to still make a tough decision. Okay, right? Now, I think another question within that is, all right, does at least one of them still look amazing? Right? I think that's a fair question to ask. But if the Bulls end up missing out on the talent, let's say that the last really good talent in is picked right before the Chicago Bulls. Let's just say that that's just the karma that ends up happening here. It would suck, right? It would suck, and we would look back on this time period and say it'll be like the Nico Mirotic time where he went off at the end of the season, and we end up missing out on having better lottery odds, and we missed out having an opportunity to add a game-changing talent. But it's a possibility here, right? And you always have to look at all the possibilities if you truly want to evaluate something. But like I say, at the same time, you also want to talk. You have to weigh the positive and the negative possibilities equally, because there is a chance for both to happen. Could this end up in a trade wreck? Yeah. Have the Bulls been good? Yes. The Bulls have been really good. The Bulls have been really fun. The question is, does it come at a cost? That's the question here. That's the answer that we don't necessarily have, that we won't have that until we see what the results are. And we might not guarantee know that until the beginning of next season. But I tell you what, looking at what Coby's doing, looking at what Josh Giddey's doing, looking at how Modest has grown over the season, looking at how this team's coming together and this team's playing on the court, Billy Donovan's coaching, right now, the investment in who we're seeing, rather than a theoretical draft pick. I don't know, y'all. Maybe I'm caught up in the moment. Maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. But I am invested in this, and I'm glad that the Bulls are also invested in this. And let's see what comes out on the other side of that. Now, before we go, I do got one piece of news. This comes from CBS Sports, but I do want to point out here, no other Chicago media has picked this up yet, right? But CBS Sports reported yesterday that Lonzo Ball is nearing a return and to get cleared on Thursday. Apparently, he did some workouts. He responded well to those workouts. So it looks like, according to, again, CBS Sports, which, again, isn't the Chicago Tribune. It's not any of those guys, right? But according to CBS Sports, he is on pace to be cleared and back on the court on Thursday when the Bulls go back home to face off against the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, of course, once an official announcement comes out, you guys know I'll drop an episode. When news drops, we drop. Very simple around here. So if that news does come out, I'll be one of the first to get a video out, right? But as of right now, I mean, things are maybe looking good. And so if the Bulls get Lonzo Ball back, especially in this time period where Trey Jones is out, right, that adds another defensive player, another on-ball playmaker to help these other young players get the ball at times. And it also can take off some of that load off Coby and Josh Giddey at times as well, even though they're cooking. And I love seeing them cook. And I think that Lonzo, I know he's technically off the minutes restriction, but I would not be surprised if maybe he goes back on one for the remainder of the season, just because if they do plan to try to move Lonzo, even just for his own safety, you may not want to risk him having another major, especially because it's now 2 major injuries with that wrist, both that could have ended his season. You may want to play it a little safe there, so to say, right? So we'll see what happens there. Overall, I'll say this. If Lonzo gets back on the court, and especially what he's able to do defensively in transition, his shot is come and gone. Yeah, this team is probably going to make it out the play-in. But we'll talk about that when we get to it, man. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.